The Rockford IceHogs are off to a great start in the Calder Cup playoffs. Plus, we preview the NHL draft and who the Hawks might take at number 3 with our pal Chris Peters from FloHockey. Do it. CHGO Blackhawks coming up next. Happy Tuesday. Welcome into the CHGO Blackhawks Podcast. I'm Jay Zawoski. That's Greg Boyson. Mario's off for today. Steven is joining us as our producer today. It's like A-Team reunited. Let's go.
A line change.
Yeah, a little bit.
Feels
good
like
times. Good times.
Old days.
It does.
Before Steven Big Time does.
Yeah, exactly.
I was asked to move to a different show.
Are you wearing makeup right now? Be honest.
I'm not.
All
I'm
right,
not.
good.
No, I missed
Some
the
people
makeup session.
I
over
need
there.
some. Look at my forehead.
That's why you
Need
wear
to white balance the camera on my head.
That's why you wear the hat.
All right. Thanks for being with us, everybody. We love you. You know that. It's a beautiful day in Chicago. Celebrate by hitting that like button, subscribing to the YouTube page. Make sure if you're listening on the podcast later on in the day, you are following or subscribed on your favorite app. And if you got some time for some generosity, leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. We are not even 24 hours removed from the NHL Draft Lottery. And we're going to talk to Chris Peters. He's going to give us a preview of who might be available for the Hawks at 3, who might be the best fit. He's going to join us at 2:30. So we're going to start the show, though, with some Rockford IceHogs conversation. I know Greg, with all his writing in Chicago Hockey Now, has been all over the Piggies in Rockford and their great start to the Calder Cup playoffs. What have you seen? What has impressed you the most?
Well, I mean, the 2 games in Milwaukee were very impressive. The first they beat the Wolves in the play-in series 2 straight. They had the big overtime win, then they blew them out in game 2. That was a team they played 12 times in the regular season, only beat 3 times.
Yeah.
And then the Admirals won the division in the regular season. Again, they played them 10 times, only won 3 times, including 0-5 in Milwaukee. They win game 1 in overtime, and then they blow them out in game 2. It's like almost like a mirror of a series. The IceHogs, that first game, the Admirals are a far more AHL veteran team than the IceHogs are. Not a lot of NHL prospects on their squad, so they've got they're a very physical team. The AHL, it always takes me a couple of games when I go back from the watching Blackhawks all season, and all of a sudden you're watching AHL games. It takes you like a game and a half to remember. Things are slower down here. It's far more physical. Not everything is tape to tape like you're used to. Like there's a major difference between the two. But the game 1, the Admirals came out and it was clear that they wanted to just set the tone physically. They wanted to check them out of the building. And, much to the IceHogs' credit, they withstood it. And they gave up 2 goals in 15 seconds in the first minute of the second period. But then they scored twice in the final 8 minutes of regulation. And Colton Dock,
12 seconds.
12 seconds, first shot. I didn't even see it. I was looking down, typing that overtime had started, and I look up, and the entire team's on the ice for winning.
Overtime has begun.
Delete.
The
Overtime
game is over.
It's really what it was. And it was a great win. And then Saturday, they scored in the first minute of the game. Joey Anderson, first of 3 goals, a natural hat trick. The first road hat trick in IceHogs playoff history.
All right.
And a 4-point night. They took the crowd out from right away. The Admirals, again, all night long, tried to get the physical, especially after the whistle. But as Mark Eaton told me, they were, preach patience don't get involved in that stuff. Just keep at it. You'll eventually find your game, and it worked. The IceHogs had a 3-0 lead. Milwaukee scored a goal midway through the second period, got some momentum. The building was alive all of a sudden, but like 3 minutes later, Samuel Savoie gets his first AHL goal and just kills that momentum. The game was over at that point. He had 3 points that night. Big game for him.
I got to wear my shirt. Mario got me a Savoie jersey when he was out there at the game.
Nice.
So I got to break it out for the next show. It was 2 really big wins. Drew Commesso, fantastic, especially in that second game. There was a big shot difference. Not a ton of great scoring chances, but anytime they did, Milwaukee had one. He slammed the door shut, but a lot of good things to be excited about for the IceHogs, because it's not just the Joey Andersons and the Brent Seanies and the Zach Sanfords doing the dirty work. You've got the kids, the guys that matter, are looking good. Yeah, and let's focus on Commesso, because it's been talked about a lot, but we know everyone doesn't hear every episode. He gets hurt. Landon Slager gets called up. Kind of goes through a bit of a, I don't want to call it rock bottom. That's probably a little dramatic, but
that's the wrestling show Dave and I are recording.
It's a little bit more like, oh man, like kind of a bummer. Pull himself out of it, and since then he's been great, and it's continued into the playoffs, and he's looked awesome. We talked about it a little bit yesterday on our draft lottery reaction show, where when a team goes out and acquires a guy like Spencer Knight, who's 23 years old, a blue chip goaltending prospect, you gave up Seth Jones to get him. It's very clear the Hawks see Spencer Knight as a major part of their future. Drew Commesso could very easily have gone into a shell and began pouting and started looking around at other situations, talking to his agent. Instead, he just started playing the best hockey of his career, of his pro career.
Yeah.
And making a case for himself in an already loaded goaltending system with Knight, Soderblom, and Brossoit, all NHL caliber goalies. Comesso's making a case for himself to get a meaningful look in training camp and in the preseason next year as well. And just as we talk about the plethora of defensemen the Blackhawks have, suddenly they have a plethora of goaltenders, and maybe a guy that you thought you wouldn't be trading suddenly becomes a trade chip because you feel so good about the development of someone else, or you're very pleased with the recovery of Laurent Brossoit, or whatever it might be. All of a sudden, they're pretty deep in some pretty important spots. And I think we all thought Commesso was going to be good and an NHL goalie. In your mind, Greg, does this recent performance, this stretch of the late regular season and the playoffs, do you think this has accelerated his timeline at all?
I don't know if it's accelerated it, but it's definitely got it back on track.
Okay.
I think there was some, I don't want to say doubt in Commesso, but I think there was some pumping of the brakes a bit beginning of this year. And then, I mean, if you had nothing but faith in Drew Commesso and you knew without a shadow of a doubt he was your goalie of the future, you don't trade for a Spencer Knight.
True.
But he's responded. If you look, his last, I believe, 14 starts of the regular season, whenever he came back from that injury, which was basically February 1st to the end of the season, he had a .940 save percentage.
That's insane.
Yeah.
I don't care if it's the American Hockey League. .940 is
over
nuts.
13 starts. And in the playoffs, he's given up 4 goals in 4 games, and his save percentage is .969. Nice.
It's less than 1 because there was overtime for 12 seconds.
Right. So he's been fantastic, and I think, sometimes guys just need to get refocused a little bit. They need to get, maybe that couple weeks away kind of gave them a reset. Sometimes, players will say all the time, seeing it from afar gets you in a better mindset. And I think that's what happened to him. But he's always been a confident guy. We've talked to him multiple times on this show. He doesn't lack confidence. He knows his abilities. It just took a little bit of time for him to get it all together. So the Hawks are in a really good situation because you have, You have Knight. He's your guy. Now Comezzo's playing really well. You had Soderblom, had a really nice, rebound season.
Mm-hmm.
You still have Laurent Brossoit signed. Who knows what's ever coming out of that?
Yeah, I don't know. That's a really weird situation. I mean, maybe it's a buyout, but that feels like a kind of a waste of an asset.
It puts the Hawks in a really good spot because if you look at this year's free agent market for goalies, it's not good. That's why the Hurricanes gave Freddie Anderson a 1-year extension, because they knew he's better than anything that's on.
Yeah.
Even the constantly hurt Freddie Anderson is still better than anything out there. So maybe that helps them, gives them a little leverage if somebody calls and say, hey, you have 3 good goalies. What do you want for one of them? Maybe you move a Soderblom because of Comezzo. Maybe I don't think there's any trade value for Laurent Brossoit right now until he proves he can come back and actually play. But if he's on pace to come back and actually play this year, that might make Soderblom a little expendable. I'm not advocating that they need to trade Albert Soderblom, but just it's an option.
Yeah. I mean, the question too is, and we probably don't have this answer yet. I don't know if we have enough of a sample size on Comezzo to make the call yet, but who projects as a better NHL goalie? Is it Comezzo or is it Soderblom? Now, Comezzo's got the pedigree, right? 2nd round draft pick, and really strong at BU, and you checks all the boxes of a goalie prospect. But we have 3 full seasons of Soderblom now, like 2.5. 2 have been good. 1 has been ass.
Yeah, and the good ones were good to the standard of an NHL backup.
Yes, an above average NHL backup.
There was never a moment last year, even when Soderblom was playing his best, where I was like, oh my God, that's our number 1 guy for the next 10 years. There's never been that moment. No. It's been like, hey, cool. Maybe he can be good enough for 2 more years until Comezzo is ready to be the starter. But then Spencer Knight walks in, and that changes the whole everything. Landscape of the goalie. It doesn't make it worse or necessarily, well, it makes it better because now you have multiple guys you believe in. But, Soderblom still, I mean, I don't want to take anything away from his season last year. His turnaround was incredible. It was probably the best story of the season as far as, a guy coming in that wasn't even supposed to be in the NHL this year, and he came in and, until Spencer Knight showed up, was the best goaltender the Blackhawks had. But there were still, the times where you were like, ugh. It seemed that it seemed when Knight arrived, Soderblom had the reverse effect, and it kind of affected his game a little bit. Granted, he wasn't playing as much. Yeah. But there were kind of the same, we saw some of those itchy moments we saw all last season. You're always going to have that. So, Soderblom's an RFA, so the Hawks have the rights. He's not going to command anything huge.
I don't think so.
He's not going to command a long-term deal. He's not going to command a ton of money. But, he might be a good trade chip if you believe in Comezzo and you think Comezzo can take that next step and be Spencer Knight's backup next season, or if you believe Laurent Brossoit is actually going to play next year, we'll see what happens. It's an interesting fluid situation, and you can never have too much goaltending.
No, I mean, someone's going to get hurt.
Look in the playoffs the last couple of years. I mean, the Golden Knights used 4 different goaltenders, including Laurent Brossoit to win the Stanley Cup 2 years ago. Anthony Stolarz, who got injured last night in Toronto. Hopefully he's doing okay.
I guess he left the hospital, which is good.
But he started some of those playoff games last year because Bobrovsky was struggling for the Panthers. So you always look at the Hawks. How many. Scott Darling came in 2015 and saved that opening round series.
You need it.
And you had, Ray Emery was a guy that helped the Hawks win a few games. So you have to have 2 goalies today. The NHL goaltending position has become like running backs in football. It's not just one guy. You got to have 2.
No, and Soderblom, who's a guy who most of us are ready to pretty much just wave goodbye to after last season. Oh, yeah. Brossoit gets hurt training for the season after he signs as a free agent, can't play the entire year, and all of a sudden now Arvid Soderblom looks like a piece to the future. So things can change very, very quickly. And I'm glad that, having the option, you're rolling, I will say 3.5 deep at goal right now because you don't know what Brossoit is. You assume he's going to be fine, but I don't know what I'm basing that on at this point aside from hope. Yeah. So we'll see. More on the Rockford IceHogs coming up next, including a pair of young defensemen who have looked phenomenal since returning from Chicago. Hit that like button for us. Back in a moment on CHGO Blackhawks. And what is Sunnyside? Sunnyside is a cannabis dispensary where I was this morning, stocking up on my good news counting sheep. Love that place. Love that stuff. Need to sleep. Sleep is good. Sunnyside Cannabis Dispensary is your home for judgment-free cannabis shopping. So whether you're new to the cannabis game, whether you're an old pro, you're going to feel knowledgeable. You're going to feel like you have options. You're going to be able to find the exact experience you're looking for if you want it to be sleep, relaxation, calm your anxiety, whatever it might be. The people at Sunnyside are going to help you get it squared away. I already mentioned the Good News Counting Sheep, which is my go-to pretty much every night of my life. They've also got the Good News brand, which is my favorite of the disposable vapes. And they've got what I like to call the dog walkers, just enough to get around the block and get things done. Great stuff there. They've got locations in Wrigleyville, River North, Champaign, South Beloit, and more. And if you're a pro, over 100 strains on the menu with new ones added every day. They're expertly curated by their wellness advisors, so you're in good hands at Sunnyside. Visit sunnyside.shop for bright buys every day, including 50% off your first 3 online purchases. Steiner Math says 150% off. Enter promo code HICHGO at checkout to qualify. Exclusions apply. Sunnyside Cannabis Dispensary. Bright buys every day, only for 21 plus or Illinois MedCard holders. And if you've ever tried to buy a home, get a loan, or just deal with money stuff in general, you know it can be a lot. That's why we got to tell you about the Rate app. And it's seriously a game changer. You can pre-approve for a mortgage in minutes without the need to jump through a million hoops. And if you're thinking about a home equity loan or a personal loan, you can secure one in under 15 days. The Rate app also helps you find the best homeowners and auto insurance based on what you actually need. The whole thing is powered by AI or A1, so it's smart and saves you time and money. And something that's an unexpected bonus, they've added over 800 free wellness videos. I downloaded the Rate app yesterday just to check it out because we've been talking about it so much. They got like breathing meditations on there, all kinds of good stuff. So if you're into that, stretching, meditation, these are tools to help you feel better mentally and physically, whether you're trying to buy a house or not. Those things are valuable for everybody. So if you're stressed out about a loan or your mortgage, seriously, just let the Rate app handle it. Once that's covered, you can go hit one of their free wellness videos to chill out. It's one app that helps with both your wallet and your well-being. Download the Rate app today to get started. Again, I want to remind everybody, please hit that like button. We got about 250 people watching and only 66 likes. Hit that like button and hit that subscribe button on the YouTube page. That little thumbs up, real easy to do, doesn't cost a cent and helps us out big time. Before we went to the break, we talked about a pair of young defensemen. And I think anyone who's been paying attention to the Hawks knows we're talking about Kevin Korchinski and Artem Levshinov, who look really, really good. I especially want to take some time to focus on Korchinski. And last year, has to play at the NHL level. You see him holding his own, but kind of floundering a little bit. Up and down this year. Looks okay, looks better. Then he's sent down for the playoffs in Rockford and looks like he is playing with the confidence we haven't seen from him since the day they drafted him.
Yeah, those 2 games in Milwaukee, Korchinski was the most impressive of all the players. He didn't. He just looks like a different player out there. Skating with a lot of confidence, not shying away from the physicality at all, getting a few of his little, sneaky shots in there from time to time as well, not backing down, which is good to see. When you think about Kevin Korchinski's game, physicality is not something that comes to mind, but knowing that he's willing to do it when the situation calls for it is huge. He's not intimidated by the playoff style of hockey. As I said, his skating has been phenomenal. The best skater on the ice by far.
Yeah, he
in
looks
that
like
series.
he's flying out there.
And if you haven't seen it, he had the assist on Joey Anderson's third goal. It was a power play goal, but it was a stretch pass from blue line to blue line right on the tape. And talked to Joey Anderson after game 2, and he was like, I turned around and he saw me, and like I thought he was going to get it to me right away, but he had the patience to just wait an extra second until I cleared the blue line, and boom, there it was. And all I did was put my stick down, and it was on there.
That's it.
And the rest is easy at that point. He's got the numbers too. The offensive production is there. He's got 4 points in 4 games. He had the goal in game 1 against the Wolves that helped to get to overtime. So very encouraging from Kevin Korchinski. Still a lot to work on, but he's still a 20-year-old defenseman. Would like to see him get a little bigger still, but the fact that as the lights get brighter and the games get more important, he's finding a new level to his game. That's what you want to see. That's what the Stanley Cup winners of every single year, including what we got to see here in Chicago, was like. As the games become more important, your stars become better, and that's what he's doing, and it's a very encouraging sign.
Yeah, and there's just a lot of things too. Like, you got Aiden Thompson with 3 points in 4 games. Noah Allen's got 3 points in 4 games. You mentioned Savoie earlier. Colton Dock has played 2 games since coming back for injury, has the overtime winner 12 seconds in, and Levshinov again. He's only got the 1 goal.
It was good. It was a big one though.
But it
was the overtime game winner against the Wolves in game 1. Set the tone. Levshinov, you see with him at least those 2 games in Milwaukee. You still see the raw talent, but there were some moments there.
Yeah.
He's still adjusting to that physicality. I don't think, it sounds silly, but I don't think, he didn't have that constant physicality in the NHL as he's getting in these 2 games with Milwaukee. There were some puck management issues, especially in game 2, and the Admirals' lone goal in game 2. He kind of just got absolutely walked on. But overall, you see what the Blackhawks see in him there, just like in the NHL. There was a lot of good, but there was a lot of, he's still a teenager. Like,
playing in his 4th league in 4 years, and
all that stuff.
Learning yes.
But overall, he's been good. Korchinski's been really good. Ethan Del Mastro not showing up on the score sheet, but he's been a physical presence. He's been keeping people off of Drew Comezzo. He's been doing very good at getting the puck out of the zone. Those little things that your defensemen need to do that don't necessarily get them the glory, but you can't win games without. Aiden Thompson was the first time I got to see him play live. Definitely has that speed that the Hawks are looking for.
They do like that, yes.
Relentless on the forecheck. That line, that bottom 6. That's where that series turned, because they started winning the forecheck. They were down 2-0 in the 3rd period of game 1, and all of a sudden their bottom 6, the Savoie line and that Aiden Thompson line, along with Gavin Hayes, who I want to give a shout out to. He's got 2 points in this series. He's got, I believe, 11 shots through the 4 games. Led the team in shots in game 1 of that series. He's a guy that got injured, missed a chunk of the season, and then the last month of the regular season really started to find his game. Started producing more points. He's been really good in the postseason so far. And again, he's another forechecker. Him and Paul Ludwinski as well. Ludwinski had a goal in game 1, and he's another player where his speed is noticeable and his relentlessness on the forecheck. Those are things. These are guys that are hard to play against.
Yeah,
they make life difficult for the opponent, and that's what you want. Like, if there comes a day where that's your 4th line, you're doing pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, and as Holly points out, Colton Dock has come back from a long injury and has provided physicality right off the bat. And that was always kind of the thing with him is, will he stay engaged game after game? And it's only been 2 playoff games. They're playoff games. You hope engagement won't be a problem. But I think we saw him sort of fix that consistency and towards the end of his time in Chicago before the injury. What's frustrating for him, I'm sure, is he finally starts to turn that corner in the NHL, become a plus contributor every night, and then another injury sets him back. So I'm glad to see him not get overly discouraged, go back to Rockford and continue, pick up where he left off in Chicago. There's so much to be optimistic about.
There's a lot to be said about winning this time of year in the AHL, where these guys are starting to learn how to win. They're starting to learn how to come back. They're starting to learn how to hold leads. When they were up 3 and they gave up that goal and it's 3-1, you're kind of like, uh-oh, if the Admirals get another one here, this can unravel quickly.
Sure.
But instead, the next shift, the Admirals were all over them, but they weathered it. And a couple minutes later, Savoie gets the goal. It's 4-1, and that game was essentially over at that point. The Admirals, third period, they just wanted to get out of their parking was about to expire and they needed to leave. So this is important. You talk about, Kyle Davidson has talked since he took the job about building a culture, and the culture is being built in Rockford. These guys are playing together. They're now playing very important games together, and they're winning these games. It's not just the AHL veterans, that are doing them. It's the kids that were drafted to be big parts of this team's future that are performing at a high level.
I know maybe we make too much of this as, what our observers, fans, whatever you want to say, but there is something to be said for dudes that are close. And guys that want to go to battle for each other, and going through the Calder Cup playoffs, and even an AHL season where guys are up and down, back and forth. A buddy's going away for a while, then they come back and you're reunited, and the gang's all back together, and let's go do this together. When you get to the NHL level and you get in the dog days of the regular season, Christmas, Valentine's Day, where you're just grinding it out, like games 40 through 60, right? It can be tough, but you've got guys playing for each other, standing up for each other. It just helps everything. And then when the playoffs begin, it's a whole different animal. Instead of a team of mercenaries, which is kind of what the Hawks have been over the last few years, is 1 year deal, deal, come in, try to help us form a team here, and then, okay, you're gone right away. Now, I think we've reached a point in this rebuild where the guys that are here and the guys that they're going to sign this summer, for the most part, or trade for, whatever it might be, are going to be here for a while. So you can start building that stability and building the team element of the thing, rather than just, let's just get over the hump until the next phase of the rebuild.
Let's just find 18 guys to finish the season. It's no shock or surprise that this team started playing better at the end of the season when these guys started coming together. Guys that have been going to those development camps for 2-3 years, those off-ice development camps, a lot of these guys, when you talk to them, credit those to starting to build that community, build that brotherhood, so to speak, brother. But those are important, those team-building things. They sound silly, but you get to know these guys, and they become more than just your teammate. And you definitely, when you like the person you're going to battle with, it definitely makes you want to battle harder.
Yes.
And it's no surprise that the locker room became a better place and the team got better when more of these guys got here at the NHL level, and we're going to see more of it over the next couple of years.
Nothing brings teammates together like the Wendella boat cruise on the river.
Hey.
Okay? So if you need to get your team united, corporate, this is a free ad, by the way, for Wendella.
I was going to say, I didn't realize.
Hit the ad there. I'm like, hold up.
That's how you do it. You get on that boat and you go have fun together. You go bowling, you go to a cooking class, call it a day, and you're ready to punch people in the face on the ice. These things are completely connected, 100%. All right, speaking of hope for the future, we're going to talk to, in my opinion, because he's on hold, the best in the business.
Because he can hear us right
Chris
now.
Peters from FloHockey. We're going to talk about the draft lottery. We're going to talk about draft prospects. We're going to talk about the Hawks system. So stick around. Chris Peters from FloHockey on the other side of this break. Hit that like button in the meantime here on the CHGO Blackhawks Podcast. And just like your favorite team needs a home ice advantage, your home needs a home floor advantage, and Empire Today can help you get it. Empire Today has flooring experts. They're dedicated flooring professionals who focus on flooring every single day. There is nothing these people do aside from floors, floor analysis, floor metrics, all those sort of things. Before they go to bed, they chew on tile samples to test the durability.
Like my dog.
Yes. They are flooring experts. That's what you need. You can go into a big box store and they're going to have a flooring department, and Toilet Plunger Tommy will be working in there today. He doesn't know anything about floors except that they're flat and they go in the ground. I need more than that, Toilet Plunger Tommy. I need the people at Empire Today. They are the best bet for a new floor. Empire Today lives and breathes flooring, and they will be with you every step of the way. It's a whole different ballgame. They bring the showroom right to your home, not literally, figuratively, of course. You could pick the flooring and the right colors for your space. See how it looks with your furniture in your house with your pet hair. You want to get those colors just right. Get precise measurements taken and have all your questions answered so there are no surprises with Empire Today. You get clear upfront and inclusive pricing. Plus, you can schedule installation as soon as the next day, because who wants to wait? Schedule a free in-home estimate today, because some things are just better at home. CHGO listeners can receive a $350 discount when using promo code CHGO. Yep, you heard me right. A $350 discount with the code CHGO. Restrictions apply. Visit empiretoday.com/CHGO for full details. Make sure you visit that specific website so they know you're browsing from us. And whatever the sport, the app to bet is CIRCA Sports Illinois. CIRCA Sports, it's sports betting the way it should be. CIRCA Sports Illinois has high betting limits, low holds, and exceptional customer service. Bet on all your favorite teams in every game this season. Spreads, props, futures, or in-game. CIRCA Sports has it. Fund and bet like a pro from anywhere, anytime in Illinois. March Madness is coming. Who do you like? What bets are you watching? Starting to feel like this could be the year for the Leafs. Download your bookie today at circasports.com. Must be 21 or older. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
If you want to just get rid of $100, just give it to me. I'll put it to better use.
All right, let's go out to the guest line and bring in our buddy Chris Peters from FloHockey. What's up, Chris? How you doing, man?
I'm doing all right, guys. How are you?
We're great. Thanks for doing this. I know it's a very busy time for you. The next 2 months or so are going to be crazy, and then you just go into mothballs for the next 10.
Yeah, that's exactly how that works.
Yeah. Well, let's start with the draft lottery. The Hawks end up third, and I think before the lottery began, it sort of felt like a foregone conclusion that Schaefer and Misa would be 1 and 2, however you want to shape it out, and then everybody else would sort of fall in line. But with the Islanders winning it, do things change in your mind in terms of where they might go with number 1 overall?
Well, it's interesting. It was a shock to see, the Islanders jump up. It's been a long time since they've had the number 1 pick, and they were, fairly competitive for a good chunk of the season. And then here they get the number 1 pick. But here's the thing about the Islanders, they are barren really in the prospect system. They got Cole Yzerman in the last draft. That's a good prospect. He's going to help them in the scoring department, but they don't have a lot else. There's not a lot of depth there. There's not a lot on the blue line coming up next. So there's certainly a possibility that Matthew Schaefer, the consensus number 1 guy, makes a lot of sense for them. What complicates this is that, if you're the Islanders and you had no reservations, no idea really that you'd be picking at this stage of the draft, there is one other player that at least you have to have an extended conversation about, because it's a little bit more than the best player available discussion. That is James Higgins, and he is a local product. He's born and raised on Long Island. He is a diehard Islanders fan. And the thing about the Islanders is they have not been a free agent destination. They have not, they're not a team that's frequently going to be one of the teams that's not on a no trade list. It's not been a place where everybody wants to play. And the last time they had the first overall pick, John Tavares was their pick. And then he eventually, when he had the opportunity, left in unrestricted free agency. That's not great. You could potentially pick a player in James Higgins with that same selection and have a guy that not only wants to be the number 1 overall pick, but wants to be a New York Islander. Everybody wants to be the number 1 pick. Not everybody wants to be a New York Islander. This guy does. So I think it complicates the decision. It's not because it's a great story. It's because it's a business decision at the end. I think that there's a number of things. He is not so far away from these other players that it makes a complete, it makes a mockery of the draft. The fact that Schaefer has only played, 30 games when you include all the different tournaments that he played in, and I think it's still under 30 at that point, there isn't a single player in this first round or even in the top 5 that is a sure thing. There isn't a guy that you could say this is absolutely going to be an NHL player or an NHL star. That's just the way this draft class looks this year. I think if you were to put all of these players up against the top of last year's class, Schaefer, Misa might have a chance to hang with them. I think you probably take Schaefer over Levshunov, but I still think Levshunov is right in that discussion among that tier of players if you think he's going to be a number 1 defenseman. So there's a lot of complicating factors. And now that New York is there, I think it also puts into play the opportunity to trade down. And if they do that, if say they really do value having James Higgins and they don't want to use the number 1 pick on the local kid, there's an opportunity to find somebody that really, really wants Matthew Schaefer or really, really wants Michael Misa and trade back. And as long as you make sure that you still get James Higgins plus an asset or more. So there's a lot of different things that could happen here. It seemed pretty cut and dry. Like if San Jose is going to be at the top, Schaefer is an easy call there. If it's Chicago at the top, then you're probably looking at a forward. So those are the types of things. I think with where New York is, and the other thing we have to remember is they don't have a general manager right now. So predicting their draft strategy is a bit fraught at this point. So what I would say is this is a long-winded answer to say anything can happen. I do think that Schaefer remains a viable option, Misa a viable option, but I don't rule out James Higgins, who has slipped back a little bit. And so it does open up a litany of possibilities for the Sharks, for the Blackhawks, for anybody that comes after them, depending on what they do with that top pick. The most likely scenario is they pick Matthew Schaefer, but it's not a foregone conclusion, like I think we would have said if it was the Sharks.
Well, I mean, if you draft James Higgins, then you avoid those years of you have to trade for James Higgins because he grew up an Islanders fan. Because, I mean, that is a rule that all players must play for their hometown team at one point in their career. So you just get that out of the way right off the bat. Is there any scenario where Matthew Schaefer isn't taken 2 by the Sharks if he's there? Now, we look at the beginning of the World Juniors. You have Porter Martone is there. He's playing with Macklin Celebrini. Ryan Rosofsky's their coach. If he goes crazy, does that kind of change their mindset? Or is Schaefer definitely 1 or 2?
I think I'd have a hard time seeing Schaefer going any lower than second. I think that I don't think Porter Martone is necessarily close to that discussion as much as he was before. I think that the idea of the Sharks potentially landing their number 1 defenseman is there. I don't think Sam Dickinson, who they drafted last year, I don't think is a number 1 defenseman. I think he's a really good defenseman, probably, could be a top pairing, could be top 4, a guy that helps you in a variety of ways, plays good minutes, but Schaefer looks like he could be that number 1 defenseman. He's got the size, he plays a physical game, but I do think that there's still risk involved in picking a player that's missed this much time. I don't think if I'm an NHL team, I don't want to rush Matthew Schaefer into the NHL after a season lost to injury. I actually don't think, personally, I don't think there's a single player in this draft that I would put into an NHL lineup at the start of the season. And that includes Michael Misa, who I think at least has a chance. And I would say that Schaefer has a chance as well, but there's new options for these players too. Could college open up and maybe play a hybrid year playing with a college hockey team? That's also a possibility for these players that wasn't existent before. So, I think for me, the Sharks, the obvious choice for them would be Schaefer if he's available. And I just don't see any scenario in which he goes below 2. But at the same time, just because he's been consensus publicly doesn't mean he's consensus among 32 NHL teams. And so if that's the case, if one of those teams happens to be among the top 3, then, that changes the dynamic a little bit.
All right. So from what you're saying here, I kind of want to mirror this conversation because now we've got people asking, does it make sense for the Hawks to try to trade for number 1 overall to the Islanders, like flip 1 and 3 for whatever asset you want to give to do that? But my question is, like, if there's no clear-cut difference-making guy, do you think there's anyone that Chicago or really anyone else is going to identify as this is the guy we have to have, this is a guy that's a perfect fit? And let's keep it with the Hawks because that's the show we're doing here. Is it worth giving up an extra asset to move up 2 spots in a draft where there's no clear-cut number 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, really?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that there is at least a discussion to be had. The Hawks are in a position where they have a lot of future assets available to them, and that includes multiple draft picks. That includes prospects that have signed contracts and some that have not. So there's a litany of opportunity there for what Kyle Davidson and his team can do. Does it make sense if you say we view Michael Misa as the number 1 prospect in this draft, and if we want to get him, you might roll the dice and say, well, maybe Schaefer gets picked first, and then the Sharks have to do a bit of a recalibration on who they're going to pick. It probably would end up being Misa in that situation. It's not a foregone conclusion, but it could be. So you're kind of rolling the dice. If you don't want to roll the dice, then yeah, sure. If there's a trade to be made and you think that Michael Misa is the dynamic talent that you want to have alongside Connor Bedard, then that makes a lot of sense. If you are okay, if there's not a lot of separation between, say, on your boards from Michael Misa and Anton Frundell, or if Porter Martone is in that discussion or whoever it might be, then I think you are comfortable standing pat and not losing one of your future assets. But let's also keep in mind that the Blackhawks have built up their prospect system and their number of picks. They're not going to have a place for all of these players. They can't use all of them. That's a thing that kind of, yes, you compile prospects, you compile assets, but you also utilize them to get stuff that you need. And I think with the position the Blackhawks are in right now, maybe there is a situation where that number 3 pick is a better trade asset to get something a little bit more substantial for the here and now, if you're not so convinced. So I do think that a trade is absolutely in play. But if, let's say, Michael Misa is available at 3, or if you feel like you want to get him, that might be worth making that trade if there's some deal to be had with the Islanders, because I think that's what you would have to do to get that player.
And let me ask you this real quick, is that we're just looking ahead to June 27th. Like, if there's kind of an understanding of where the top 3 want to go, and if the Islanders are hell-bent on Higgins and everyone knows it, and the Sharks are hell-bent on Schaefer and everybody knows it, and the Hawks want Misa or whoever, Martone, Frundell, whoever it might be, can they just come together, a handshake agreement? Okay, you're taking him, you're taking him, you're taking him. Great. We don't have to trade anything. We're all getting what we want. High five. Let's go. Let's just go make our picks in rapid succession.
Yeah, that doesn't tend to happen too often.
Yeah.
It's not something. I think that there is a discussion there. If the Islanders are going to take Higgins, there's no need to trade. Right. There's just no need to do it. Like, if you're convinced that that's going to happen, you're like, okay, we'll wait, and you'll take him 1, and we'll take. So I think that it behooves all those teams to play their cards pretty close to the vest in order to make the best possible deal. Like I personally think if I am the New York Islanders and I can be cagey about it, and I'm not, I'm telling everybody, oh, we don't want Higgins, but I can trade back and get an additional asset, then I think I'm going to do that. I think having Higgins plus would be a great coup for me on multiple fronts. And I don't think, even though Higgins dropped back, I really don't think there is a ton of separation between him and Michael Misa, aside from, Misa is a better goal scorer and has a couple of inches on him on height. And so really, I think you're talking about dynamic players. So yeah, there's a lot of discussion to be had here for both teams, for all 3 of those teams. And I think that you have to listen to everything because, with the position the Blackhawks are in, they absolutely need to find a way to land somebody that's going to be a running mate for Bedard here, whether that's from this draft or through a trade. So there's a lot of different things that you could do to make that happen. But I will say, like, this draft, like last year, I thought Macklin Celebrini is the closest thing I've seen to just a sure thing in some time. And, I know Blackhawks fans probably wouldn't like hearing that, but that includes Bedard. There's just a more complete player in Celebrini. This year, there's just nothing close to that as far as I'm concerned. There's a lot of what ifs in a lot of these players.
You mentioned a running mate for Connor Bedard. Is there a forward in this top 5 or whatever that you see as a better match for him than others?
I do think that Misa would add another dynamic element. It would be a kind of a dual threat situation where he's a legitimate goal scorer, had 62 goals this season. Is a guy that absolutely can be a threat and make plays. And I think he's got some, he's gotten more physical. He's got good skating, so I think that that's probably a guy that, when you look at the various opportunities that exist, he's one of them. I think that Anton Frundell is another guy where, depending on whether Bedard's a long-term center or not, I think Frundell is viewed as a center. Is he a number 2 center? Is that, does that allow you to move some of these other pieces around for Bedard? But I think it's kind of tough to say with this class in general. Like, I know Martone is probably, a lot of people like the size, close to 6'3", over 200 pounds, really good player. Just like, for me, I based on the way that the Blackhawks have drafted, I don't see the fit necessarily. He has had some good run with high-end players where he thrives in that environment. And so that does make him an option. I just think that when you think about the things that the Blackhawks value in terms of pace and compete and all these different things, you want to have skill on top of that. But he's one of those guys where to me, it doesn't seem like the best organizational fit. It's not to say that he's not an option. It's just I don't necessarily see that as much. Whereas guys like Frundell, maybe a Caleb Desnoyers even, who is a really well-rounded player, good two-way guy, maybe the number 2 center of the future. Those are the things that, I can see in those players. So, this draft, I have to be honest, it's not a great one. Even like the top 7 or 8 players are comparable to previous years. So you're going to get a good player at the 3 range if you keep the pick. So, I think it's got to be a forward. And you look at those guys, I think Misa, Frundell, Martone, even Jake O'Brien, Caleb Desnoyers. I mean, all of those guys are legitimate options that you have to explore fully.
Well, for the last month or so of the season, the majority of the fan base was all excited about Michael Misa, and now they get 3. So now it's Porter Martone is the guy that the Hawks have to draft.
They have to have him.
And I'm sure that will switch 12 times between now and June 27th. You had in your very quick mock draft the Blackhawks taking Anton Frundell, who you mentioned a couple of times. I actually like him slightly better than Martone as well. What impressed me was what he was able to do this season, playing in a league full of men, not playing against 17 and 18-year-olds. He was able to play against, yes, it's not the AHL or NHL. It's not even the Swedish Hockey League, but it's playing with kind of equivalent to like an NCAA player almost, where you're playing against a lot of older players. If the pick is Frundell, sell him to the Blackhawk fans and why it's a good pick, so we don't have to on June 27th.
We'll just cue it up.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like the Blackhawks very rarely are, outside of drafting Connor Bedard, are going to go with the consensus fan selection, and that's pretty much how every team operates. There's, people listen to people like me and take our word as gospel when maybe we're not right on some of these. So I'm humble enough to say that I could be wrong. But, Frundell has been a guy I've been very high on going back to the first time I saw him 2 years ago. He unfortunately, I haven't seen him play as well as he did 2 years ago, going the rest of the way in live viewings. That's different. He's had plenty of good games in the Allsvenskan, as you mentioned, and he had 25 points in 29 games. And for a U18 player in that league, that's a substantial amount of production. A lot of it came in the second half as well. He was injured at the beginning of the season, kind of took him a while to get back up to speed. didn't make the World Junior team. One of his teammates, who's also draft eligible this year, Victor Eklund, did make the World Junior team. And so a lot of people were starting to push Frundell out. And then he goes on a run. And the thing that he has, he's got enough pace. He's strong. He's about 6'1". He's a center that is responsible on both sides. He can make defenders miss. He has a good shot. He has a bit of power in his game. He doesn't shy away from the physicality. The problem that we've seen this year, and this is why you have to be very careful about whether or not you're going to pick him at number 3, is that the consistency hasn't been there, particularly against his own age group internationally, when he should be a dominant force, as he was as an underager 2 years ago. He was the best player at an under-18 Five Nations I was at, where he took over games. And so if you believe that player still exists, he would potentially be better than Higgins, Misa, Martone. But we haven't seen that consistently enough. I was just at the under-18 World Championship. He came over late, helped his team earn promotion in the Allsvenskan. They will play in the SHL next year, so it'll be a stronger competition for Frundell next season. But when you look at kind of the all-time list of the players that were in the Allsvenskan and the production that they had in terms of points per game, Anton Frundell is tops. And that is above William Nylander, who had 27 points in 35 games when he was in the Allsvenskan. So historically, he's outproduced guys like Willie Nylander, like David Pasternak, Philip Forsberg, Jesper Bratt. So if you're looking at historical comparables, Frundell actually compares better than most of those players. The issue is that we've seen these kind of situations where he hasn't been as consistent, and that is a huge concern. So to me, I like the player an awful lot. I think that he could potentially be a number 2 center in the NHL. I understand why there were teams that are a little bit lower on him. But, in talking with people at the Under-18 World Championship, based on what he did in the Allsvenskan this year, he's very much in the discussion to be on the top 3, top 5 of many NHL teams' boards this season. So it would not be outlandish to make that selection if you think he's a better competitor and gives you a little bit more on the other end of the ice, which is an argument that you could potentially make between him and Misa. I think Misa is the more dynamic, higher offensive upside player. I probably would have, and I will have Frundell ahead of Martone on my list when it drops later this month.
All right, before we wrap up, I want to spend some time on the Blackhawks system. We got glimpses of Artem Levshinov, Oliver Moore at the end of the year. Frank Nazar really sort of came into his own. I just kind of want to give you the floor on what you saw from the Blackhawks prospects in their brief looks, and if your opinion of any of them has changed for the better or worse since last draft.
Well, I think I don't think that my opinion has necessarily changed. I think that, we kind of knew what these guys were going to be. Artie Levshinov, starting the season injured was not ideal. I was an advocate for him going back to school last year, just because I thought that, the track record of defensemen that play 2 years of college hockey is really good for translating right into the NHL. I don't mind the fact that he signed and that he had a chance to develop in Rockford. And I think, unfortunately having the late start, it kind of pushed things back a little bit, but we saw the glimpses of where he's going to be able to get to. And I think it was good for him to be in the AHL this year, playing against bigger, stronger opponents. I thought he looked even better in the NHL than he did in the AHL, which says to me that when he's surrounded by and playing against top competition, he's able to raise the level of his game. So that's a huge thing. Probably the most pleasant surprise for me is the development and maturation of Sam Rinzel. That is really the one where I think that Chicago took a big swing with their first round pick in that draft. It was a risky play, but each year Sam Rinzel has gotten better and better and better. And he's gotten stronger. And now when you are at his size and you can skate like he does, you have a chance to play a lot of games in the NHL. I think that I'm more convinced now than I was back when I had him listed as a first rounder as well in those draft rankings that year. But I'm more convinced now that he's going to have a chance to be an everyday NHLer sooner than I thought he would be. And then I really have a ton of respect for Frank Nazar. I think he's going to be a good two-way player. I think Oliver Moore is probably going to need some time in the AHL. He's got to try to continue to find the finish in his game. He is one of the fastest skaters in the world. at his age already, he is going to be a difference maker. Maybe it's not as a 2C, maybe it's more as a 3C, as a scoring depth option. But I just see a lot of value in that player. And then you look at the back end, Korchinski, Del Mastro, guys that you are going to have a chance to round out and fill out your blue line. I still think there's plenty of time for those guys to continue to develop and get things going. Chicago is going to need, I'm not worried about the prospect system. I am worried about how do you surround those players. You can't be that young in the NHL and have much success. And you don't want these guys to get their heads kicked in all year long because it doesn't help them. It doesn't help create the culture that you want. So whoever comes in as head coach is going to have a lot to work with, but Chicago is going to need to get them more to work with on the veteran side, because I think that you could have another strong year with Rockford next year. You got plenty of time to let these guys grow. But the fact that you've got Levshinov, Renzel, Del Mastro, Korchinski, all of these guys on your back end. And when we talk about trade assets too, some of these guys, you're not going to have a spot for all of them. So try to make sure that you're keeping their value high by putting them in positions to succeed, and you'll be all right. I think the Blackhawks are in a very good position for their future, even though it's not happening as fast as everybody wants it. Rebuilds take a lot of time. They're going to have to find some players, unlike the players that they found last offseason, that will actually help kind of push things forward. That's going to be the real challenge of the offseason. Because I think the prospect system is in a great spot with Bedard as the centerpiece, with these other guys coming up. But, Levshinov, Korchinski, I think will be core players for them long term. There's a lot to be excited about. And now you're going to have a chance to add another core player if you do make the number 3 overall selection.
It's good stuff. Just before I let you go, you mentioned Bedard. There's been a lot of discourse about him and his development. You talked about Frondell when compared to Nylander and Pasternak and all those things. When we compare Bedard through this point in his career to Matthews and McKinnon, he's right there. Do you have any concerns about him reaching the potential we thought he could reach when he was that generational number 1 overall pick?
None. I have none. I think if nothing else, he's going through adversity for the first time in his hockey career. Outside of when he's been injured, that this is real. And if adversity is 60-point seasons, there are a lot of players that would take that adversity in a heartbeat. So to me, here's the thing. Connor Bedard is he has some physical limitations with his size, which we knew going in. He's going to have to find more ways to create time and space for himself. And he's going to have line mates that can do that for him. I am not going to pass judgment on him based on the last 2 seasons, given what we saw from that Blackhawks roster. You're looking at one of the worst teams in the NHL over the last 2 years, and that is not a place where you can really judge. If you go back and look at Nathan McKinnon will tell you, I sucked as a rookie. I sucked for a couple of years. It took time. And he would probably trade. He even said it. He said he would trade with Connor Bedard if, he wished he would have had that level of success. The thing is great players will always find a way. Connor Bedard is one of the best prospects that I've covered. And I said, maybe he's not the complete player like a Macklin Celebrini, but if he can be one of the elite scorers in the NHL, which everyone still believes he can be, then he is going to be a superstar in this league and a guy that will help the Blackhawks go have more success. But it's going to take time, and people need to stay patient. He is still incredibly young, and he's already had a great level of success. He's already won a Calder Trophy. I mean, it's going fine. All things considered, it's going fine. So anybody that has ever said he's going to be a bust or it's not going to, I just do not buy that at all. I think that he has the drive and the desire to be the very best, and that will help carry him through. Now they just need to get him some help.
All right, Chris, we appreciate it, man. You've been super generous with your time. Hopefully we can catch up again one more time as things shake out ahead of the draft, man. But make sure you're following all of Chris's work at FloHockey. It's great. You get to watch all the AHL games there, so make sure you sign up. An invaluable asset for hockey fans, FloHockey and Chris Peters. So we appreciate it, man. Thank you.
Hey, my pleasure, guys. Thanks for having me again.
All right, thanks, Chris. We do have a super chat we got to get to before we wrap things up from Mike. He says, pick Martone third or trade with San Jose for Misa. Okay.
Sure.
Sounds good. I'm in.
Sure.
Well, before we go, we have, over 400 people watching right now and only 150 likes. So before we end the show, we would like you to do us a favor. It takes half a second, navigate over to that thumbs up button and click it for us. Those thumbs up really help the algorithm find us, help other Hawks fans find us, helps move us up the rankings on YouTube, which is a very complicated thing to figure out. So your likes, your subscribes help out huge in that way. So we'd really appreciate a couple thumbs up before we wrap things up. Mario and I will be back tomorrow at 2. I think we'll probably do our Mailbag Monday show starting tomorrow. So if you've got mailbag questions, get them in on our members only Discord, our diehards only Discord in that mailbag page, or look for the tweet we're going to send tonight appealing for questions, and we'll get to them on tomorrow's show and probably a little bit on Thursday too, based on how they've been going lately. So thanks for being here. Thanks to Greg for filling in. Thanks to Steven for descending down, taking the demotion to the Blackhawks show.
I heard the harps being strung as he walked into the studio.
Exactly. What is that? Oh, it's Steven coming down. We appreciate everybody. Thanks for being here. Hit the like one more time. We'll talk to you tomorrow at 2 on the CHGO Blackhawks Podcast.
We all silly like the mayor.